Hey, 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 as Dan would say, it's the Mainstream Podcast live. Man, we got an exciting show today. I know Dan says that stuff all the time, but I got a Pittsburgh Pirates hat on, so everything's okay. We got Sam with us. We got Yog from Farm Scent, and we're gonna talk about everything that they got going on. It's gonna be an amazing show. Sam, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, sir. How are
Yeah,
you?
good evening. Yeah, very good. I had a bit of an accident recently, so I've been off the mainstream, and it's been a bit tough. But really happy to be here, and I'm super stoked to be speaking to Yog again. It's been a few months since we got into the details since our last conversation, which I think might have been on a Twitter space. But
Right.
Yog, great to have you. Good to be speaking again.
Thanks for having me. Accident like you sold the token just before the top, or what is it like?
No, no, I got in a paragliding accident, and I've hurt my back, so I'm sort of out of action for a few
Ooh,
months.
hope not serious, man.
No, nothing too crazy. So
Okay.
got lucky. But just jumping right into it, Yog. You just you're a super serious serial entrepreneur. Worked on a lot of different types of businesses in the past, and currently you're the CEO and the co-founder of a leading agri-focused Web3 protocol called FarmScent. Can you tell us a bit about yourself? Like, what have you worked on in the past, and like how did you, of all people, find the way into Web3 and agri commodities?
Oh,
Because we've somehow started in different places, and all three of us have ended in the same place. So I'd just love to hear your story, and yeah, like what was the path that got you here?
not going to sound too philosophical, okay, and not going to talk about the destiny, but if there is some connection, then I believe in that too. I started my digital agency in 2006. At that time, I remember writing my first article, Why Should You Have a Website? So, I feel like a dinosaur now, right? Imagine. And as destiny would bring me, now I'm saying, why should you have Web3? Why should you tokenize something? So I think that question got louder. Right? But I think more importantly, I wasn't into Bitcoin. Okay. I was impressed by Bitcoin, but I thought that it is a proof of concept, you know. And I got inspired by Ethereum. I said smart contract and right on time because we were working on a lot of programming related things, right? So I said, wow, this thing is going to work. And so I experimented, and my failure story is more than the success stories. Um, so experimented a lot on how do we take Ethereum kind of solutions forward, right? My friend in parallel was working to bring more income stream for Colombian coffee farmers while I was failing at my attempts on creating layer ones, you know, and beating things, right? And not meme coins. Okay, so was actually deep inside developing things, right? And I was overseeing his progress. Okay, but I felt at one time that why would you restrict yourself with one jurisdiction, like selling Colombian coffee? It's like you are putting restriction on yourself, right? So I said like we should take that to the world stage, right? But while working on it, I noticed that what are the things you require in a agriculture commodity marketplace, let's say, right? You want to help the farmers, so you want to look at traceability. Okay, you want to look at trading, you want to look at trade financing, and all these things requires immutability, verifiability, things like that, right? And it happened to be that blockchain is the right solution for this. While I was working on blockchain things and I was failing in many things, but this was a best fit for me. So I managed to convince him and say like we should do this on chain because if we talk about immutability, that's it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's there. And if we talk about cross-border transactions and things like that, which is nightmare in fiat. Like we were trying to send $10,000. Sam, I mentioned to you in one of the talk, right? I was trying to send $10,000 to a farmer. I literally, I was made feel that I'm doing some criminal activity. I have never seen that many questions from a fiat bank, right? That what? It's just $10,000 and that farmer is selling a commodity. Why should I answer too many questions? So blockchain happened to be just the right solution, and yeah, so we proceeded with that.
Man, that's quite interesting, right? The whole fiat cross-border payment. Something that has always interested me from my early days in crypto. So I definitely could feel that. I have a question just from based off of our previous conversations. Our two projects shares a lot of synergy, a lot of energy, right? Like it's kind of a lot of the same, but in different stages and different things, different places. Can you tell me what FarmSend is, just for those that weren't part of our previous conversations?
Yeah, so it's good that our projects are almost similar, like 90% of similarities, right? Way of building it might be different, right? So there are so many people are working on this, kind of fixing these food security issues. Let's say that way, right? People are working on how to bring a better seed, how to bring better infrastructure, how to bring quality fertilizers or agriculture methods. The more we looked closer, we said that you are missing the human element. I don't see that agriculture can be sustainable for at least the next decade without making the farmers sustainable. And that was the differentiate factor for us. Like, if you don't bring farmer into the play, you might grow better seed in the lab, but who is going to grow farmer, right? So we said, okay, if the farmer is the centerpiece of it, what stops the farmer from thriving, not surviving, thriving, right? So what stops is the income. Farmer is just having lowest income around the world, right? I think it is easy to get a student loan than getting a farming loan, right? It's like, just think how crazy it is, but that's how the situation is. So we felt, okay, how can we bring more money for the farmer? Simple agenda, right? So if you go around the world, and you must have already experienced, no matter how advanced the country is or the region is, if you just go and offer additional, if you just say like, I'm going to pay cash to you, to a farmer, and the farmer is going to say, okay, I'm going to give you 10% discount or 15% discount, right? You know why that is? Because the access to liquidity and access to capital is so bad with farmers. So they think that the commodity is a burden on them. They want to dispose it off. That's it. They want to sell as quickly as possible. They are not the ones that hoard the commodity and say, let me find a better rate. No, they don't. They don't. Right? They just want to get rid of that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And being from Pennsylvania, right? One thing that most people don't know, Pennsylvania in the United States is a big potato farming area, right? So I have friends who are potato farmers who literally sell their sacks of potatoes along the side of the road. And if you come pay cash, they're going to give you a better deal than if they have to sell it to an intermediary. And that's just all around the world, right? I think that's a very common issue.
Right?
One of the
So taking that, what we felt that if we can find ways to bring income stream for the farmers, then we can make farming sustainable. And that's around the farmers, right? So we were looking at many of the things, which is like how we can increase the income stream whether with trade financing or with cross-border trade or with, adding traceability and increase the value of the product, so all things what we are building is around that concept, increase the income stream of the farmers.
Yeah, and there also two other I've got three observations, like just from what you said, Yog, that we've seen as well, like in our travels, in our work. And the first bit is around food security, right? Like the smallholders make such a big part of our agri supply chains. Like we all know that. Like
Absolutely.
tens of
Absolutely.
thousands or hundreds of thousands of farmers, depending on the regions that you're in. And they're similar to when politicians in America, Australia, Japan say, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Smallholders are the backbone of our agri supply chains. And we all know when we all work in the decentralized field. We know, the more decentralized, the more secure, your networks are. It's the same sort of concept in farming as well. And we've seen big issues in super consolidation of certain supply chains, which is pretty significant impacts on health, on food security. Like what happens if this particular business gets impacted, or there's a disease, or there's a shortcoming somewhere, and your population is reliant on these products, cause huge issues, or different countries might be reliant as well. So I think it's a really it's an understatement to not really highlight that. So I'm so happy that you brought that up, Yok, because we need resilient supply chains. We need resilient food security options. And in a world that becomes more and more fragmented, like people are now talking about the deglobalization era, right? Like
Absolutely.
these are conversations that people are having in the real world. You
I think
need
our
to have
conversation
access. Yeah.
should, sorry to cut you off. Our conversation should start with that. Food is not grown in the supermarket,
Yeah.
unfortunately, right? Because Zenji, I have no complaints, but they're not aware of the real food security challenges. They think that food is there in the supermarket. I go and pick up. So I don't see any food security challenges. But the governments are already getting aware of that. But deep inside, as you said, Sam, that this resilience in supply chain need to be observed. Because just imagine the other day we were talking, we have 63 days of food, and that's a bit exaggeration actually. I think it might have reduced to 58 days, right? And God forbid some pandemic kind of situation happens, it will further damage. And that's just such a thin ice. You need to be able to have at least a year-long stock to feed the world. If I'm not too greedy, that's the minimum starting point.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking just before, York, was it's this concept around like incentivizing farmers, right? Like if the root problems one of the root problems is around food security. How do you incentivize a robust network of growers and producers, suppliers, buyers? And from a farmer's point of view as well, like like we've spoken to governments where some of the markets, farmers aren't getting paid enough, and there's just a disinterest in working in that industry. So you have this generation of kids, young adults whose parents used to work in the industry. And there's huge attrition rates outside of it. They're moving to the cities. They're not participating in some places. Like for example, like in Sri Lanka, like in the tea markets that we spent some time in, there's a status and a cultural class sort of conflict in which people are not proud to go work these to work in these fields. And um, when stuff like that happens, it impacts the resilience of these sectors even more. So it's it's really good what you're working on, and the overlap that we have, and like that saying that you have at FarmScent, the 3 T's. I really like that because it just really simplifies where you can grow the value for the farmers and give them access. So I'm just curious, which parts have you been working on or prioritizing, over the last few years? Trading is one, trade finance, traceability. I'm just keen
Pri-
to hear about how things are
Priority wise, the trade is almost done. We already doing trading, but we haven't opened up for public sign for obvious reasons. You need to look at markets, right? So we only opened up people who we pick that these are the wholesalers we want to work with. We signed up with a big luxurious retail chain that can give good income for our farmers. We purposefully picked them. So we'll ensure quality. So in a hurried way, we brought traceability, right? Because we were thinking that we would launch the traceability only after the sensors are in place, satellite imagery is in place. But sometimes you just have to bring it, to a private. So we say, okay, let's just go with the flow. And then trade financing, of late we are working. It's not a lowest hanging fruit. We don't need to really take a look at trade financing, but we felt that if I can finance faster, the farmer is earning faster. So I'm not looking at the interest of the wholesaler. I'm looking at the interest of the farmer. I tell the wholesaler, what is your contract, right? And then they say, oh, we will pay after 15 days. Okay. How about you pay now? And I get what you pay financed. Oh, wow, that's cool. Like that's where we got trade financing into the scheme of things. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it was meant to be trade and traceability,
yeah.
but we wanted to work on the dynamics so that farmers get the money faster.
Yeah, the trade finance angle is really interesting, right? Because if you think about, if you look at like the B2B space, so like when businesses contract with each other, one of the biggest issues that you see in the market is payment delays, right? There's so many companies, like they're unicorn level companies out there that their whole business model is to have an invoicing system or a payment system or a bridge financing system so that you like there's a whole field of finance called invoice financing, right? Like that's
Oh yeah, because
specifically for
it's
that.
so crazy. It's crazy. And you know how much they charge? They charge 10%.
Yeah, yeah, and
To do what? To do
yeah,
what?
the other interesting bit about trade finance that people who are listening for the first time may not have heard, Dan or I or Yog talk about is the concept around commodity-backed financing, right? So in many of these markets, like Yog was saying, like Brian was saying, if you have cash on hand, I will give you a discount. Like that is a very that's a like that mentality and that thinking is ingrained, right? It's sometimes illiquid or transport's expensive. If there's a cash offer there, it makes a lot of sense. And a lot of farmers are used to that, but when the right infrastructure is in place, warehousing, for example, or a way to store it over the course of a cycle, the price of these commodities can fluctuate as well. So there's this aspect into trade financing called commodity-backed finance or warehouse receipt finance, which completely changes the way that people can access this stuff, right? So
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, like
Absolutely.
I'm sure these are things you're working on as well, and
That
it's great to see.
literally, there are literally thousands of things in the space. It's like you guys must have observed in your own way with the markets you're working. They're literally like, I feel like kid in the candy store, right? It's like, oh, that can be sorted out. This can be sorted out. We actually tell ourselves, calm down, just focus on few things first. You know, otherwise, just look at like um, farmers just want to get rid of the commodity. Okay, we just tell them, okay, tokenize your commodity, right? Once you tokenize your commodity, we can put it in the warehouse. Okay, who's taking that risk? An external investor. So you don't have to get rid of that. You wait for the better market rate, right? And as Sam mentioned, price fluctuates, and then the farmer is happy. Okay, of course he is sharing some part of the profit with the investor, but he is making an upside. All what we care about is whether farmer is making upside or not. That's it. All other things, we cannot really 100% optimize it for the time being, right? But that's the aim. Like, bring the income stream to the farmer, and then everything else looks after.
So I kind of just want to piggyback off of that, right? So how do you? We've been talking a lot about trade finance, right? And I know this is right down Sam and Young's, right down your alley. And I've been learning a lot more about trade finance and just things that can be done to help the farmers as I've been with Zengate for, I think it's been about 6 months now or so, right? And I come from the trucking industry, so supply chain was definitely something that I was a part of. But how do you see trade financing kind of evolving in the future? And what are one of the things that you're focused on, the ability to reduce risk for farmers and for everyone involved throughout that?
Trade financing or supply chain financing, it is a B2B matter so far. Okay. But what I see is that consumers, retail investors are going to get involved very soon, because especially blockchain will give them a lot of access. I have an extra buck of $100 sitting there not doing anything, right? I can actually put that in as a supply chain finance, right? And then that helps the farmer, that helps the wholesaler, and that helps me. This is going to happen. At the moment, the existing banking system or financing system is that you kept the money, you don't know where it goes. You are happy with the meager interest you are earning. But where it is going towards is that you want to know how exactly you're putting money and what are the role it plays, and you want to take the risk according to your portfolio. That's going to happen. That is a major shift I'm already seeing. But what we want to do to encourage that, what we are trying to do is to bring the wholesaler institutional finance first, and you say you take the risk of 40-50%, okay, then let the retail take 50% more risk, right? And over a period of time, we will just reduce and make that percentage biased towards the retail investor, right? So the retail investor looks at, okay, institutional investor means due diligence is looked after, okay? So somebody is taking a risk of 30%. Okay, let me take a risk of 70%. Institutional investor thinks that, retail investor means I can invest more, right? So there are different hybrid models that can work upon. I don't have a clear answer yet, but I'm seeing that this is going to be a retail subject going forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's I actually have like my view is completely inverse, I think, to yours. But maybe you're thinking about it in a different time horizon, because I always thought that the trade, when you think about the gap, it's like we're talking about trillions of dollars each year, right? Like the numbers anywhere from 1 to 2. I think 2.3 is the number that one of our advisors has
Say
said.
that again. Trillions.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
the financing gaps are in the trillions of dollars, and when you ask like how are you going to pull those funds together to bridge it, I always thought that at the institutional level, like you've got a lot of debt focused funds and banks, development banking institutions as well, that could really sort of support that. And the big issue that we had seen, at least from our research and conversations, was that there's just an inadequate understanding of risk. So the banks and the institutions were just not prepared to lend at the rates that they would want to, which is favorable for the farmers, right? And the only people that were able to do it was either they had that great understanding of risk, or they compensated for that lack of risk with higher rates, right? Which then obviously passes down to the farmers. But I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about that split between retail and institutional investors lending money out, because you're one of the first people that I've actually talked to outside of our company, at least, that has this view. Dan has a similar view, I think, with a lot of things on this topic. But I'm just like what?
At the moment, at the moment, the retail doesn't have any avenue to invest, literally, right? Because the only way the retail can do is to deposit with the institutional investor, and they take the money and invest, right? Because even if they wish to, where would they invest, right? But that's changing slowly. And when we say, like, DeFi was a hype, right? They say that, but DeFi can bring this magic actually. Because when institutional players come and say, like, okay, hey, like, you all are staking in validator nodes, for example, right? Why don't you think that as the base of this, right? Let institution become the validated node and let retail stake in the institutional validator node, literally, right? That is financing the farmer, right? Or the wholesaler in here. And that probably will be a very simplified approach to the Web3 audience, that this could work, right? Because I'm seeing the way institutional investors are bringing more cash, so it looks a bit overshadowed right now, right? Because you are investing 1 billion, and then another retail investor is putting few millions, so there is no balance. But that's the situation now. As and when we move forward, people are becoming more literate about finding their risk level and tools and how they can invest. They will take the matter into hand, because Web3 is giving them the opportunity to invest, which was not possible before.
Yeah, I guess the counter argument, or sorry, the counter argument to what I would normally think is, like you could just think about the crypto market, right, as a balance to the traditional markets, and I think that sort of answers it, right? Like today we have a nearly $3.5 trillion crypto market. The gold market is what, 15 trillion plus. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. You have a few companies that are multi-trillion dollars as well in value, and then you have the size of the US Treasury, the pie for US Treasuries, and then all of a sudden you think, wow, it's actually really small, like 3 trillion versus however many trillions of dollars worth of debt the US has owed to other countries, or the size of the monetary supply. But to us, like in Web3, like this is huge, right? Like these are big markets. Like Bitcoin is over $1 trillion or $1.5 trillion, and like the Cardano ecosystem, where Brian, myself, and our team are building in, is a $40 billion ecosystem. These are huge industries.
Absolutely.
Right? So I sort of see your point, right? Like it might seem like the balance is super skewed, but 10 years ago, the skew was even bigger,
even worse, right?
Yeah.
Who would have thought that you would get into a $3 trillion market cap? Who would have thought, right? It was like, okay, people had predicted this, but it was like, yeah, you think so? That
Yeah,
Bitcoin and all
we were
your
scraping it. I remember last cycle, and
yeah,
and if you were to ask the same question to every other investor and every other institution after FTX went bankrupt and Three Arrows Capital had their liquidity issues and Luna crashed, no one would have said this, right? So
absolutely.
I sort of see where you're coming from, and it might take a bit longer than we would like, but I think DeFi really bridges that gap. And I do agree, right? We don't need to live in a world where DeFi yield is artificial and it's an inflationary thing. There's people out there that want to borrow money at the end of the day.
Also, Sam, I want.
Go ahead, Yog.
Also, Sam, I want to add one more thing. You see, like people's willingness to participate is now ahead of the system, right? You see why people are looking at the ETFs. My willingness to participate is there, but I'm not thinking I should be handling it because of lack of user experience, lack of regulation, so other factors, right? Now, let's give ourselves 2 to 3 years. There will be regulatory clarity, right? There are better custodians, these and that things will happen. After that, you see the investment which will pour to crypto space is going to be multifold, right? Because there is no there is not, it's not stopping, right? You can't criminalize people and expect investment, right? If you put the founders in jail and then say that, hey, I'm not too sure about the crypto space, and but come and invest, who's going to invest? Who's going to invest that much of money? They might be playing with a little bit of additional money with this, but no serious money will come. Now we started seeing the clarity, right? And then all other jurisdictions will quickly copy US. And then you suddenly see that crypto is going to be the buzzword everywhere, right? It's not going to be a bad act to have crypto business, right?
Yeah.
That's where the retail investment will start pouring in.
I saw a clip. I know Brian has a question to ask after my
He
comment.
he kind of stole what I was thinking, so we were on the
No,
same
no,
wavelength
I
there.
was going to say I saw a clip on the FarmScent Twitter. I think you were speaking to a peer of yours about meme coins and Deepin, right? Like we're an RWA project. You know, if sort of as we wade into the waters of the IoT space, we become more and more Deepin-ish, I guess. But I think your colleague was talking about the retail craze around meme coins, which we've seen, right? Which has been quite strange, right? Because that's the new influx of faces and sort of activity happening in crypto. But Deepin RWAs, security tokens, the stuff that we're working on there's a compliance burden that has to be overcome. And I think you're right. Like I think what you guys were talking about on that clip will sort of play out. It'll just take a little bit more time, but real opportunities are there at the end of the day. Like you said, there's real yield for trade financing, and the people on the opposite end receiving the funds are real people. They're not bots, they're not random meme coins. Like these are real farmers, real producers that benefit from these systems. So yeah, I really hope the clarity gets better and better in the markets that you're working in, the markets I'm working in as well.
I look at it from a very investment portfolio point of view, right? Everybody is designing their own portfolio, right? So you are investing certain things in bonds, certain in equity, based on your risk level and what position of your life you are in based on that, right? Would you, if your income is $100, you are not going to, probably you are tempted to gamble that $100, right? But if you have $1 million, would you gamble it? You would break your portfolio into, okay, I can take $1,000 from that and gamble. The current situation is people just want to gamble quickly into the meme coin, right? But if you ask them to put their real money, eventually they will put on stable coins in the sense more top market cap, non-meme coin assets, right? Will meme coin stop? No. People will still gamble with some percentage, but they're not going to gamble the entire wealth they have, you know? So the percentage that are playing at the moment is playing out to be so big, right? But wait till the real retail investor that they're saving for their life come into the system. They're not going to put their savings in life in a meme coin. Who is going to get convinced with that?
Yeah, it's a great analogy, right? Because like the influx, right, that we've seen today is just the start. People are not investing serious money. I think the
See,
institution, and I think same at the institutional level as well. But yeah, I think
right.
the thinking about from a ratios point of view really puts some perspective into what is to come, and ultimately the opportunities they can invest in, right? Because I was talking to a colleague of mine in the office today around like portfolio allocation, right? And a proper investor thinks about traditionally 60-40 split, like equity and bonds. But now the fixed income side, you've got with DeFi, you've got all these other options, right? You don't have to just buy treasury bonds. You can now have an impact focused trade financing loan that gives you a better rate. So it's sort of
Absolutely.
interesting when you think about it from that point of view. And so,
Let's say Palm Economy launches RWA marketplace, right? And then would I put the entire million I have? May not be. But then I say like, hey, you know what? Why wouldn't I put 100,000, 200,000 of mine in a business that may go upside? For me, that will be the real equity, in the division. That's what we are expecting from people, because right now people already started talking, because the questions I receive, yo, what percentage do you think we should put in crypto, right? And that's a very good question, because so you have equity, you have bonds, and then you have crypto, right? Irrespective of who gets that, whether Bitcoin gets, Ethereum gets, you guys get, or anyone gets, it doesn't matter. But that 10% is going to come into the play. That's what is important. So retail hasn't really started. Their turn is coming.
Yeah, their turn is coming. It's quite exciting times, right? And to see everything that's being built, and a lot of people building on the ground, right? And one of the things, you've been on the ground, Yog. What I just kind of want to bring it back to the farmer and the people on the ground. What is the biggest challenge that you ran into from these folks? Like, is it trade financing? Is it the traceability? What are the opinions you see when you're down there talking to the farmer?
Honestly, with farmers, there is no issue. Okay. Because with farmers, the equation is very simple. I'm not locking them into any contract. They're free to sell anywhere. But if I find a better buyer who can give you more money, would you sell through me? Simple proposition for them, right? Initially, they might think like, I don't think this is too good to be true, but that's where the relationship starts, right? As and when someone else sells, they observe, okay, this is actually true, right? And then I get my payment, and then we bring players also, they recognize who's your escrow, for example. If your escrow is a good bank and they have heard about, right? I don't want to name them, right? But if they have heard about, they say, oh yeah, this is cool. This is, so I'm not dealing with farms and literally, I'm dealing with that bank which I'm comfortable with, right? So that's what I think the biggest challenge for us is that the initial crypto created a bad name for itself. Okay. So the regulators are always not sure, and government is not sure, right? That's the macro level. That is the big challenge, because it took for us a solid 8 months more to convince the regulators that we can make it work this way, which I think was probably a waste of time. It should have been a couple of meetings, or probably there should have been a better framework, and we just joined, right? So yeah, that's how it is at the moment. But we are also receiving a lot of positive things, like Dubai, for example, with Vara, situation with them was very conversational, right? We could manage to put our point of view, and they could give why they don't think that way, right? And we bring in credible player to ensure that it is approved. Indonesia, this current government is fantastic, and and we have got very good access, and we always get good support from them. So, and then we are slowly opening up in other markets. In Africa, we are coming. India, we are trying. We're just working with the government. So hopefully, we will sort it out. But those are the challenges. Challenges are not from farmer that much.
Yeah, the whole government and navigating that whole terrain, I think, is probably one of the hardest things that we face sometimes, right? The solution's there, it works, but it's getting people the trust, right? So, Sam, I think you
Yeah,
unmuted.
I've just got I've got a new line of questioning that I've really been itching to talk to you about, Yog. And It's about the Peak blockchain, right? So it's been one of the most exciting launches that I have been personally following for a number of months, and I think over half a year, ever since we had our first conversation in, just in Twitter DMs. I think I somehow came across your bio. And, FarmScent is one of the many projects building on Peak right now. Peak recently had a really successful launch, I think a week or two ago. And yeah, a lot of these projects have basically come out the woodworks. It's got a huge ecosystem. So I'm just curious, can you tell the listeners a bit about Peak? Many of us in our community come from the UTXO Bro sort of ecosystem, Cardano, Ergo, Nervos, Bitcoin. Peak is probably a new ecosystem that I've never heard of, and just the floor is
Yeah,
yours.
yeah. I mean, Peak is a very fantastic ecosystem, and I'll tell you, when we were discussing initially, I had a call with the founders. My view is, and that comes from when we started working from real long time, is that you select people first, and the skills, tools, infrastructure comes later. First, to decide whom you want to work with, right? So that tilted in their favor more. The founders are wonderful guys. Their team is fantastic. Okay. Then I sat where we are heading towards. Okay. Now, Peak is a layer one which is dedicated to deep in RWA. That means there are a lot of projects that is going to come which are going to be specifically building for deep in RWA. Am I going to be looked after more in this ecosystem, or I go to a generic ecosystem, let's say Ethereum, right? While Ethereum is having more important things to handle, will my requirement take priority or not? Those are the things we looked at, right? So imagine, I'm just giving an example. So there is a SkyX building weather stations, right? Collecting data from their IoTs and creating a reward mechanism and giving the weather system wherever it's required, right? Completely decentralized weather system. So we were talking to SkyX. How about we get our agriculture sensors and we add SkyX and we create a combination of machine that brings more income for farmers for giving data to the weather station, right? And that gives data to SkyX, which is really good. And that gives data to FarmSense, which is again good, right? Now, if I build in an ecosystem that is targeted, then opening up partnership with these players will be faster than if I would do that in Solana or in Ethereum. Okay, not saying that they wouldn't be doing deep in at a larger scale. What I'm saying, that chances of us succeeding in that ecosystem would be faster because we're meeting almost all these ecosystem projects on daily basis, right? So we'll find some way or other way, right? Another player like Mapmetrics, right? They're collecting a lot of map data. Obviously, we are not going to use Google Maps, right? We are using mapping to show and highlight where exactly your produces are grown, right? And then later point of time, we will probably use a lot of hyperspectral images to get whether there are any chemical residues or stuff like that, right? That mapping base, we don't want to use Google Map. For what? Why would we pay centralized agency, right? So I was looking for alternative. That's where I looked at Mapmetrics is building in P, right? So it was easy to have that partnership. That is why I love the Pix ecosystem, which we call Picosystem, right? A lot of players are building in and very enthusiastic group of guys. It also appears sometimes that the Pix team's enthusiasm is actually spilling over to these guys. And then collectively we're building, we feel like as if we are building, like we are extension of Peak's ecosystem sometimes. So yeah.
So I need to know, because I didn't know much about Peak at all, right? And I don't know if you have ever heard of the project World Mobile Token, which is a DeepIn project.
I had a lot of chat with them. Yeah.
I'm an Earth node holder, right? So I help run that network as an Earth node, and I'm really interested in Peak now. What other projects that are over there building that maybe some people can look into, or what excites you most about what's being built over there?
Oh yeah, tons of projects actually, and I would name them whatever I could remember, right? So SkyX, I'm very excited about them. Veru, the Wi-Fi system, they are in multiple network, but they are also compatible with Peak. These are the guys we are exploring to take Wi-Fi to the farmers area, where there are a lot of dead zones, I'm excited about Ex Machina. The Ex Machina is tokenizing the machines. That's going to be utilized in a lot of agriculture, this, right? I'm excited about Drone Dash. We are going to do a lot of drone mapping and stuff like that, which again, I'm building in ecosystem. There are a lot of already success stories, like Natix and Silencio. Silencio is doing it's collecting noise pollution data, okay, and it is a lot easier for people to participate. Natix is using camera-based data that includes the mapping and other things, but using camera mostly. But I've been always like an underdog fan, right? So I'm expecting Map Metrics to do better going forward, right? And then yeah, so just so plenty of projects that are building, like and then there are a lot of projects like that's for example giving security, and this, that it is so difficult, that cyber security is taking a backseat. So that's project is very important. So yeah, I'm so excited about the entire ecosystem. I
That
hope
makes
I
me really
didn't.
excited. I'm really going to have to do some deep diving into a lot of those projects you mentioned, because
Oh yeah, Brian, you have to I've been following.
you keep me too busy all the time, Sam. I don't know what to
Yeah.
tell you.
But I just want to say similar to like I was saying how important it is around like food security, like to actually talk about this stuff. The bit that even like our projects have run into challenges in the past has been how fragmented some of these solutions are. Like there's different ecosystems that are really good at certain things, but it might just be like one thing that they're good at. If it's IoTs, or if it's access to data, or maybe they've got like the best risk assessment tooling. But if it's on like a lot of people talk about interoperability as an issue, and the big thing they talk about is like how do you move one token from one blockchain to another, right? That's what people really care about from an investor's point of view. And you run into the same challenges when you're trying to move data, right? When you're trying to blend
Yeah.
this stuff together. Yeah, like when you're talking about within the Pico system, you've got access to these different projects, literally building on the same stack. It makes a huge difference. And I think it's a really smart move that you had. And yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. Similar to how, certain ecosystems where DeFi has really emerged, like everything just like maps together nicely. You've got different, token offering portals, dexes. You then have the lending apps, then you have the synthetics apps, then you got the perps. Everything sort of blends together. People can move between. But when it comes to DeepIn, it just doesn't. Like, I think Peak was like it just caught my eye just because you just had so many of the same, not the same project, but same segment of work, the same space that was just building in the same place. So I think some ecosystems have done a really good job at it with DeFi. Like we know what we know the ones we're talking about, Sui,
No,
Aptos.
absolutely. See,
You know,
specialization in chain is going to be mandatory, almost unsaid rule, right? If you look at AVAX, for example, right? Avalanche.
Yeah.
If there are a lot of gamers are coming to build gaming over there, we shouldn't be surprised, right?
Yeah.
If we are looking at Polygon, and then they are looking at, like, you can build in Immutable X, you can build in Ronin, right? And
Yeah.
there is Aglair coming, so we shouldn't be surprised, right? So I had two choices to look at, whether like an ecosystem, established ecosystem like IoTX, they're also doing great, right? And looking at Peak. I felt the projects that are building very aggressively in the deep in ecosystem, I couldn't find a better ecosystem than Peak. Like almost like, and every day the count is increasing, and I have to get introduced to new. But last I heard there were 53 guys building in our channel, So I'm like, yeah, that is so cool. Like an ecosystem is not launched, nor that they haven't worked for years. It's an old project actually. They were as working as IoT ecosystem and slowly moved into Web3 and deep in. So I'm expecting them to have hundreds of projects. By next year, I'm expecting the more new projects going to come, right? And our philosophy is, do not try to build by yourself. I don't believe in competition. I just hate competition, right? Um, I just want collaboration. There are a lot of overlaps with everybody. Why would you go and build the same thing? If weather data somebody can give, connect the dots, right? So that's what excites me most about Peak. So I can just go and get dots connected rather than build it by myself, which is almost impossible to do.
So we're kind of coming towards the end of our time, and I think it's been an amazing conversation. But I need to know, and the listeners need to know, Yog, if they want to find out more about FarmScent, where do they go? What do they need to do? Where can they find more about you and what you're building over there on Peak?
So Twitter is our go-to place, right? So that's very important, and we are doing a lot of podcasts. Like every Thursday, we do a podcast as well, bringing in builders like you, and we talk. And you guys are doing this amazing podcast as well. Um, and and then obviously, like, you can get information on our website, Discord. We recently started, been a couple of weeks, but people are showing a lot of love there. More personal based chats can happen there, right? Yeah. So yeah, but I have questions. Am I allowed to ask question or no?
Yeah, go ahead, man. Ask away.
Yeah, yeah, I have a question. You guys, how you guys are doing with the TGE? Because I want to promote you guys a bit, isn't it? Like
Well, there was an exciting article just put out yesterday, Yog, on X. So if you follow Palm Economy, there was an article placed talking about the TGE event, which the TGE event is a whole event, right? There's news that's coming, and it actually starts today. But that'll lead into the final token sale that'll happen after the holidays. Obviously, with the holidays,
mhm,
people aren't going to be around. Who wants to buy crypto on Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever it is that you celebrate, right? You're going to be out with your family, and that's what it's about. So right after that, we're going to roll right into the token sale starting in January. Then we're going to distribute that token. All of it's coming.
awesome,
It's going to be clear this month, right? So
awesome,
stay
awesome.
tuned.
Yeah, we've
Yeah,
been
no,
actually
definitely.
holding back on a number of different exciting announcements. So it's starting to just
Awesome. I,
peel
I,
away
I
bit by
have
bit.
already marked like notify, so I don't miss the TGE. But to people who are listening and to our community also, like, what you guys are building is amazing, and we are very excited because our thoughts match, of course, because we are doing the same thing, and there will be a lot of sync in the future as well, and because there are a lot of access to different markets, we would be failing in certain things which will pass on. We don't want you to go through the same curve, and I'm sure the same thing would happen, when you guys fail somewhere and you will pass on those inputs. So it's going to be very exciting. If anyone wants to support agriculture in general, just don't support one ecosystem. Okay, just don't support FarmSend, and and that's it. We are fan of FarmSend. No, support agriculture, because food security is not an individual matter. It requires so many people to build it together. So support farm economy, and look at that easy is coming. So I think buying token is one of the easiest way of showing support. No financial advices, but this is right. And so yeah, so keep an eye, guys. This is going to be very exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yog.
Yeah, Sim. Any final words before we kind of close her out?
No, I just yeah, always grateful to have Yog on, and yeah, so echo what he has to say around collaboration over competition, right? There's enough, you know, it's the pie
It's a
is
whole
big
world. It's a whole
Pie is-
world.
enough. The
Oh,
pie is
it's a
big
big
enough,
world.
and when you think about, we talked about ratios earlier on, like it's just we're just getting started really, and I I was listening to it, just the final thoughts, listening to a clip, I think, a few hours ago. Or I just read something from someone on Twitter, and it just said, don't worry too much about what's happening, this cycle, the next 6 to 12 months. Like really, obviously, take some life cycle, lifestyle chips off the table, and be sensible with the opportunity that you basically have right now if you've been in the space for a while. But this is really where the groundwork gets laid out again, for the next 5 to 10 years, or and longer, obviously. Like we've got this new regime change. I think there's a lot of exciting stuff happening, and for those that are listening, don't dip in and dip out, when the money's made. I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff, and being involved today really sets you up to be part of the right communities, right ecosystems, and to be able to support the huge things that many people like FarmSend, stuff the Yog's working on and his team's working on. I think tremendous impact that can have on the world. So it just starts step by step, but it's just a really exciting time, to be honest. And I'm grateful to be a colleague of yours in this space.
No, thank you so much, and thank you also on behalf of community that you guys are building um, complex ecosystem, because we have experienced it, right? So and that only we can feel how complex it is to sort out this. You are out there to sort out the world's food problem, right? See, I'm always a target audience guy, right? But I couldn't figure out whom I will leave from this target. Who doesn't eat, right? So that's the market we are talking about.
Sometimes
Right.
y'all gotta eat too much, buddy.
Likewise, buddy. So we're together in that. So the other day in one space, I was talking with Williams, yeah, that we are in the floppy disk era of Deepin, right? So the experimentation is going on, but that's not our final output. There's a lot going to come, right? When, like, give another couple of years, you might be doing the trillions of trade we are talking about, right? And we might be collectively helping these millions of farmers already, right? And ensuring food security. That's the impact we're talking about. And that's not going to happen overnight, right? But the foundation stone is already laid, and that's what our focus should be, that we are constantly building and we shouldn't stop. And so that would be my final thoughts on this, that keep growing.
Never stop building. That's very
Yeah.
words of wisdom, right? I couldn't agree with you more. And I just want to say thanks to all the listeners, to everybody that listened in live, who listens to this later on. Y'all, thank you for joining us. We'll have an update here. We'll get you back on at some point and get some updates from you. Sam, thank you. And I just want to remind our community that around 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so that would be like 8 p.m. UST, UTC, I think, off the top of my head. I could be wrong there. Zengate got some news coming. Stay tuned. It'll be dropping soon. Sam, close us out.
Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much.